Florence Nightingale was born on May 12, 1820, in the city of Florence, Italy, after which she was named. Her parents, William Edward Nightingale and Frances Fanny Nightingale, were wealthy and socially prominent English landowners who were traveling in Europe when Florence arrived. The family returned to England shortly after her birth and settled on their Derbyshire estate, Lea Hurst. Raised in privilege, Florence was exposed to a world of intellectual rigor and cultural refinement, yet she sought a purpose beyond the confines of her class. The Nightingale family adhered to the ideals of Victorian society, which placed strict expectations on women. These expectations included mastering domestic skills, engaging in polite society, and preparing for marriage to a suitable gentleman. Florence, however, stood apart from these norms. From a young age, she exhibited a keen intellect and an insatiable curiosity. Her father, an advocate for education, tutored her in classical studies, mathematics, philosophy, and languages. Florence thrived under this tutelage, becoming fluent in French, German, and Italian, and developing a love for critical thinking. By the time she was a teenager, Florence's ambitions diverged from those of her peers. While other young women her age delighted in social events and the prospect of matrimony, Florence found herself drawn to issues of human suffering and societal improvement. A pivotal moment occurred when she began accompanying her mother during charitable visits to the poor and sick in the local villages. Observing the plight of the less fortunate awakened a sense of compassion and responsibility in her. Florence's sense of purpose was cemented by what she later described as a calling from God. At the age of 16, she experienced a profound spiritual awakening, feeling that she was destined to serve humanity. In her diaries, she wrote about the inner conflict this calling stirred within her. Her aspirations to work in the field of caregiving clashed with the expectations of her upper-class background, which deemed nursing an unrespectable profession for women of her status. Nursing in the early 19th century was far removed from the professional discipline it is today. It was a role largely relegated to untrained and often impoverished women who worked in unsanitary and dangerous conditions. For a young woman of Florence's upbringing to consider such a path was nothing short of revolutionary. Her parents, especially her mother, were horrified by her intentions. Fanny Nightingale envisioned a more conventional future for her daughter, filled with prestige and security. Despite the opposition she faced, Florence remained steadfast. Her father's support was crucial during this period. While he did not fully understand her desire to break societal norms, he admired her determination and provided her with a small annual allowance, granting her financial independence. This act of support allowed Florence to pursue her interests without being entirely bound by her family's expectations. In her quest for knowledge, Florence studied medical texts and sought out conversations with doctors, clergymen, and reformers. She was particularly influenced by the writings of Elizabeth Fry, a social reformer and prison reform advocate, and by her own observations of healthcare's deficiencies during her charitable visits. These influences shaped her vision of nursing as a calling that required both compassion and intellectual rigor. Florence's ambitions began to attract attention, not all of it favorable. Victorian society was quick to criticize women who defied traditional roles. Her desire to forego marriage and devote her life to a profession scandalized her social circle. Gossip circulated about her eccentric behavior, but Florence remained unmoved. Her journals from this time reveal a young woman deeply committed to her vision, willing to endure ostracism to fulfill what she believed was her divine mission. As the 1840s progressed, Florence's determination grew. She began to explore opportunities to gain practical nursing experience, a decision that brought her into contact with institutions that were revolutionizing care practices. These early experiences laid the groundwork for her later achievements, giving her insights into the systemic reforms that healthcare desperately needed. By the end of the decade, Florence Nightingale had positioned herself not only as a young woman of profound intellect and conviction, but as a trailblazer ready to challenge societal norms. Her early life set the stage for her emergence as a figure who would not only redefine nursing but also inspire a global movement toward compassion, education, and systemic reform. Florence's story was only beginning, but even in her youth, the spark that would become a beacon for generations was already evident. Florence Nightingale's decision to pursue nursing was not a sudden impulse, but a gradual realization shaped by years of reflection, observation, and spiritual conviction. Her unwavering belief in a divine calling defined her path, setting her apart in a world where societal expectations sought to confine women of her class to domestic roles. This chapter delves into the spiritual, intellectual, and emotional journey that led Florence to commit to a life of service through nursing. At the heart of Florence's calling was a profound spiritual experience she referred to as the voice of God. This occurred when she was 16 years old, during a period of introspection and prayer. She felt a powerful and unshakable sense that her life had a higher purpose. This conviction did not waver throughout her life, serving as both a source of strength and a compass guiding her decisions. In her diaries, she wrote about the moment with an almost mystical reverence, describing it as a directive to dedicate herself to alleviating human suffering. Florence's religious convictions were deeply rooted in the Anglican faith, but her interpretation of spirituality went beyond traditional doctrines. She believed in a practical theology, one that emphasized action over ritual. To her, serving humanity was the highest form of worship. This belief became the foundation of her nursing philosophy, which combined compassion with discipline and emphasized the dignity of every patient. Her family's resistance to her aspirations posed a significant obstacle. Nursing was seen as a lowly, unrespectable profession, associated with women of dubious character rather than those of noble birth. Florence's mother, Fanny Nightingale, vehemently opposed her daughter's ambitions, viewing them as a rejection of the family's social standing. Fanny's vision for Florence involved a life of leisure, managing a household, and fulfilling the traditional role of a wife and mother. Florence's resolve was tested as she navigated these familial tensions. She spent years engaging in debates with her parents, particularly her mother, about the importance of her calling. Her father, while initially hesitant, eventually provided some support by granting her financial independence. However, this did little to quell the disapproval that surrounded her. Friends and relatives voiced their concerns, urging her to abandon what they perceived as a frivolous and unbecoming pursuit. During this period, Florence sought solace in self-education and travel. She read extensively about healthcare systems and nursing practices, often corresponding with medical professionals and reformers. Her intellectual curiosity led her to study the works of prominent social reformers, including Elizabeth Fry and Thomas Southwood Smith, who advocated for public health improvements. These readings solidified her belief that systemic change in healthcare was both necessary and achievable. Florence's travels across Europe further expanded her understanding of caregiving. In 1847, during a visit to Kaiserswerth, Germany, she encountered the Lutheran Deaconess Institute, a community that trained women in nursing and provided care for the sick and poor. This experience profoundly impacted her. For the first time, she witnessed an organized and professional approach to nursing, one rooted in both compassion and discipline. Kaiserswerth became a model that inspired her vision of what nursing could become. Despite the inspiration she drew from Kaiserswerth, returning to England reignited the challenges she faced from her family and society. Florence entered a period of deep internal struggle, grappling with the isolation her ambitions caused. In her journals, she expressed feelings of loneliness and frustration, lamenting the lack of understanding from those closest to her. Yet, these struggles only strengthened her determination, as she viewed them as trials to overcome in her divine mission. By the early 1850s, Florence's perseverance began to yield tangible results. She secured a position as superintendent of the institution for the care of sick gentlewomen in London. This role marked her first major step into the professional world of nursing. It allowed her to implement the principles she had observed and studied, proving her capabilities and earning her recognition within the healthcare community. The decision to dedicate her life to nursing was not without cost. Florence sacrificed the comforts of social acceptance, the prospect of marriage, and a life of leisure. Yet, she never wavered in her commitment. Her calling was more than a career. It was a vocation born of deep faith, intellectual rigor, and an unyielding desire to improve the lives of others. This period of her life was defined by struggle and opposition, but it laid the foundation for her groundbreaking contributions to healthcare and society. Florence Nightingale was not merely following a path. She was forging one that countless others would follow. Florence Nightingale's journey to becoming the pioneer of modern nursing was not only shaped by her determination and faith, but also by her deliberate pursuit of education and practical experience. In a time when formal training for nurses was virtually non-existent, Florence sought knowledge from a variety of sources, combining intellectual rigor with hands-on learning. This chapter explores how she laid the foundation for her revolutionary approach to nursing through education, observation, and her relentless pursuit of excellence. Nightingale's decision to educate herself was a direct response to the absence of established nursing institutions in England. Nursing in the mid-19th century was more akin to unskilled labor than a professional discipline. Caregivers often lacked training and operated in unsanitary conditions, which led to high mortality rates and poor patient outcomes. Recognizing this gap, Florence dedicated herself to understanding both the science and the art of caregiving. She began by studying medical texts and manuals, many of which were intended for physicians rather than nurses. Topics such as anatomy, hygiene, and disease prevention became focal points of her self-directed learning. Her mathematical acumen also proved invaluable as she delved into statistics and public health data, skills that would later underpin her groundbreaking work in healthcare reform. These studies gave her a theoretical understanding of medicine, but Florence knew that theoretical knowledge alone was insufficient. Her time at the Lutheran Deaconess Institute in Kaiserswerth, Germany, in 1851 marked a turning point. Florence spent 3 months immersed in the daily operations of the institution, learning from experienced deaconesses who combined spiritual devotion with practical nursing skills. At Kaiserswerth, she gained first-hand experience in patient care, hospital management, and the importance of cleanliness and order. The deaconess's emphasis on discipline and compassion resonated deeply with her, and she later described this period as transformative. Florence's experience at Kaiserswerth also exposed her to the potential of organized nursing education. The institute's structured training program inspired her vision for a similar model in England. She recognized that to elevate nursing to a respected profession, formal education and rigorous standards were essential. Kaiserswerth's influence would echo throughout her career, particularly in her later efforts to establish the Nightingale Training School for Nurses. Another significant influence on her education came from her travels in France, where she observed the Sisters of Charity, a Catholic religious order dedicated to caregiving. The sisters' commitment to service and their meticulous attention to detail reinforced Florence's belief that nursing was both a practical and spiritual calling. These experiences deepened her understanding of the importance of holistic care, which addressed not only physical ailments but also emotional and spiritual well-being. Back in England, Florence applied the lessons she had learned abroad through practical roles that allowed her to refine her approach. One such role was her appointment as superintendent of the institution for the care of sick gentlewomen in London in 1853. This institution provided care for women of limited means, and under Florence's leadership, it became a model of efficiency and compassion. She introduced reforms to improve sanitation, patient care, and staff training, demonstrating her ability to translate theory into practice. Her work at the institution also highlighted her talent for administration and leadership. Florence was meticulous in her approach, maintaining detailed records and emphasizing accountability among her staff. She recognized the importance of data in evaluating outcomes and made extensive use of statistics to assess the effectiveness of her interventions. This analytical mindset would later become a hallmark of her contributions to public health. Florence's relentless pursuit of knowledge and her commitment to improving nursing were not without challenges. She faced resistance from traditionalists who viewed her reforms as unnecessary or disruptive. Additionally, her focus on discipline and professionalization was often met with skepticism, particularly from those who believed that caregiving should remain an informal, domestic duty. Despite these obstacles, Florence persisted, driven by her vision of a world where nursing was recognized as an essential and respected profession. By the mid-1850s, Florence Nightingale had amassed a wealth of knowledge and experience that positioned her as a leading figure in the nascent field of nursing. Her education was unconventional, pieced together through self-study, observation, and practical application, yet it was remarkably comprehensive. These formative years not only shaped her philosophy of care, but also prepared her for the monumental challenges that lay ahead. With her foundation firmly established, Florence was ready to bring her vision to life on a scale that would change the course of history. Florence Nightingale's name became synonymous with heroism during the Crimean War, a conflict that revealed the dire state of military healthcare and thrust her into the global spotlight. This chapter examines her role in the war, her journey to Scutari, and the transformative impact she had on the conditions faced by soldiers and the field of nursing as a whole. The Crimean War, 1853 to 1856, was fought between an alliance of Britain, France, and the Ottoman Empire against Russia. The conflict arose from disputes over territorial control and religious influence, but for the soldiers and medical staff involved, it was marked by severe hardships. Disease, malnutrition, and inadequate medical care caused more deaths than combat, exposing the deficiencies in military healthcare. Reports from the front lines painted a grim picture of squalid hospitals, rampant infections, and a lack of basic supplies. In 1854, the British government, under pressure from public outrage over the conditions faced by wounded soldiers, sought solutions. Florence Nightingale, already recognized for her expertise in hospital management, was approached by Sidney Herbert, the Secretary of War, to lead a team of nurses to the British military hospital in Scutari, modern-day Istanbul. Despite the enormity of the task and the opposition she faced from skeptics, Florence accepted without hesitation, viewing it as a moral imperative. Florence assembled a team of 38 nurses, most of whom were volunteers from religious orders or laywomen with varying levels of experience. Their journey to Scutari was fraught with logistical challenges, including hostile environments and bureaucratic inefficiencies. Upon their arrival in November 1854, they were met with conditions even worse than anticipated. The hospital at Scutari was a dilapidated, overcrowded facility plagued by filth, inadequate ventilation, and contaminated water. Disease outbreaks, particularly cholera and typhus, were rampant, and mortality rates were staggering. Faced with such overwhelming adversity, Florence's first task was to impose order. She and her team began by addressing the hospital's most pressing issues: cleanliness and hygiene. They scrubbed floors, washed linens, and improved sanitation by removing refuse and ensuring clean water supplies. These measures, though basic, had an immediate impact on reducing the spread of disease. Florence understood that hygiene was not just a matter of aesthetics, but a critical determinant of survival. In addition to improving sanitary conditions, Florence worked tirelessly to reorganize the hospital's operations. She implemented systems for inventorying supplies, streamlining patient admissions, and ensuring consistent food distribution. Her administrative skills were invaluable in transforming chaos into efficiency. Recognizing the importance of nutrition, she advocated for the preparation of nourishing meals tailored to patients' needs, a practice that had been largely ignored. Florence's work extended beyond practical reforms to addressing the emotional and psychological needs of the soldiers. She made nightly rounds through the wards, offering words of encouragement and comfort to the wounded. This practice earned her the enduring nickname, the Lady with the Lamp. For many soldiers, her presence symbolized hope and compassion in the face of unimaginable suffering. Her tireless dedication endeared her to the troops and bolstered public support for her efforts. Despite her successes, Florence faced significant resistance from military officials and medical staff, many of whom resented her presence and questioned her authority. The entrenched bureaucracy and rigid hierarchy of the British military posed constant obstacles. However, Florence's meticulous record-keeping and reliance on data gave her a powerful tool to counter criticism. By documenting the effects of her interventions, she demonstrated incontrovertibly that her reforms reduced mortality rates and improved outcomes. By the end of the war, Florence Nightingale's impact was undeniable. Mortality rates in the Scutari hospital dropped from an initial 42% to below 2%, a testament to her revolutionary approach to healthcare. Her work in the Crimean War not only saved countless lives but also highlighted the critical importance of nursing, hygiene, and hospital management. The war became a turning point for the professionalization of nursing and the broader field of public health. Florence returned to England in 1856 as a national hero, celebrated for her contributions to the war effort. Yet, the accolades meant little to her compared to the lessons she had learned. The Crimean War was not merely a chapter in her life, but a crucible that solidified her mission to reform healthcare on a global scale. It revealed the systemic failures of traditional medical practices and underscored the necessity of her life's work. The war had been a call to action, and Florence answered with unwavering resolve, leaving a legacy that would resonate far beyond the battlefields of Crimea. The image of Florence Nightingale walking through the darkened corridors of Scutari Hospital, lamp in hand, has become one of the most enduring symbols of her legacy. Yet, her time at Scutari was far more than a story of quiet heroism. It was a period of relentless work, groundbreaking reforms, and the emergence of a new paradigm in healthcare. This chapter explores the significance of Florence Nightingale's role as the Lady with the Lamp, her contributions during the Crimean War, and the broader impact of her work on nursing and public health. The nickname, the Lady with the Lamp, originated from soldiers and was later popularized by a report in the Times and the poem Santa Filomena by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The imagery was a testament to Florence's habit of making rounds late at night to check on the wounded, offering not only care but comfort to those in despair. For many soldiers, her quiet presence brought a sense of security and compassion, qualities that were sorely lacking in the grim conditions of Scutari. Florence's nightly visits went beyond their symbolic value. They reflected her holistic approach to caregiving, one that prioritized the emotional and psychological well-being of patients alongside their physical health. She understood that recovery was not merely a medical process, but one that required dignity, hope, and human connection. Her ability to inspire trust and gratitude among the soldiers under her care was a hallmark of her work, earning her admiration from patients and colleagues alike. However, the image of Florence as a saintly caregiver, while accurate in its depiction of her compassion, only scratches the surface of her contributions. Her work at Scutari was characterized by tireless reform and innovation. Confronted with overcrowded wards, unsanitary conditions, and inadequate supplies, she implemented a series of measures that transformed the hospital environment. By prioritizing hygiene, organization, and efficiency, she drastically reduced the mortality rate, which had initially been as high as 42%. One of Florence's most significant achievements was her use of data to guide her reforms. She meticulously recorded statistics on patient outcomes, infection rates, and causes of death, which she analyzed to identify patterns and propose solutions. Her pioneering use of statistical methods and data visualization, such as the Coxcomb chart, demonstrated the efficacy of her interventions and provided compelling evidence to support her demands for systemic change. This approach not only saved lives during the war, but also laid the groundwork for modern evidence-based medicine. The reforms Florence implemented extended beyond immediate medical care. She recognized that many of the soldiers' ailments were exacerbated by poor nutrition, inadequate clothing, and lack of clean water. Working with her team and local suppliers, she improved the quality of food served to patients and ensured they had access to clean drinking water. These seemingly simple measures had a profound impact on recovery rates and highlighted her ability to address health holistically. Despite her successes, Florence's time at Scutari was far from easy. She faced significant resistance from military officials and doctors who resented her authority and viewed her reforms as meddling. The rigid hierarchy of the military made collaboration challenging, and she often had to navigate bureaucratic roadblocks to secure resources and implement changes. Yet, Florence's unyielding determination and the tangible results of her efforts eventually silenced many of her critics. The strain of her work at Scutari took a toll on Florence's health. The relentless demands of overseeing the hospital, combined with the emotional burden of witnessing so much suffering, left her physically and emotionally exhausted. She contracted a serious illness, believed to be brucellosis or chronic fatigue syndrome, which would affect her health for the rest of her life. Nevertheless, she continued to work tirelessly, driven by her commitment to the soldiers and her broader mission. The image of the Lady with the Lamp also played a critical role in shaping public perceptions of nursing. In an era when nursing was often viewed as menial and disreputable, Florence's work elevated the profession, showing that it required skill, knowledge, and compassion. Her example inspired countless women to follow in her footsteps, laying the foundation for the professionalization of nursing and its recognition as an essential component of healthcare. Florence Nightingale's legacy as the Lady with the Lamp is both symbolic and substantive. While the image of her quiet devotion endures as a powerful testament to her compassion, her work at Scutari was revolutionary in its scope and impact. She not only saved lives during the Crimean War but also demonstrated the transformative power of nursing when practiced with discipline, intellect, and empathy. Her time in Scutari solidified her place as a pioneer in healthcare, a role that would continue to shape her life's work and inspire generations to come. While Florence Nightingale's work during the Crimean War earned her international acclaim, it was the post-war period that defined her as a transformative figure in public health and nursing reform. This chapter examines how Florence shifted her focus from immediate caregiving to systemic change, leveraging her experiences and reputation to address the broader challenges of healthcare infrastructure, policy, and education. Upon her return to England in 1856, Florence avoided public celebrations of her heroic status, preferring to focus on the lessons learned from the war. The experience at Scutari had revealed systemic failures in military healthcare, but it also exposed deeper issues within public health systems. She believed that the preventable suffering she had witnessed could be eradicated through better management, infrastructure, and education. This conviction became the driving force behind her work in the years to come. One of Florence's first initiatives after the war was to conduct a comprehensive investigation into the conditions of British military hospitals. She used her meticulous records and statistical analyses to produce a groundbreaking report titled Notes on Matters Affecting the Health, Efficiency, and Hospital Administration of the British Army. Published in 1858, this document highlighted the preventable causes of illness and death among soldiers, including poor sanitation, overcrowding, and inadequate nutrition. Her recommendations for reform were instrumental in reshaping military health care, leading to the establishment of the Royal Commission for the Health of the Army. A central tenet of Florence's post-war mission was her emphasis on sanitation as a cornerstone of public health. She recognized that many diseases, including cholera and typhus, were exacerbated by unsanitary living conditions and contaminated water supplies. Her advocacy for improved sanitation extended beyond military hospitals to civilian communities, particularly in urban areas where overcrowding and poor infrastructure posed significant health risks. Her work played a pivotal role in advancing the sanitary reform movement in Britain, influencing public health policies for decades. In 1859, Florence published Notes on Nursing, What It Is and What It Is Not, a seminal text that outlined the principles of effective nursing care. The book was not only a practical guide for caregivers, but also a philosophical treatise on the role of nursing in healthcare. It emphasized the importance of cleanliness, ventilation, nutrition, and empathy in promoting patient recovery. The book's accessible language and practical advice made it a valuable resource for both professional nurses and lay caregivers, cementing its status as a foundational text in nursing education. Florence's advocacy extended to the professionalization of nursing, a field that she believed needed formal education and training to achieve legitimacy and respect. In 1860, she established the Nightingale Training School for Nurses at St. Thomas Hospital in London. The school's curriculum combined theoretical instruction with practical experience, emphasizing discipline, hygiene, and patient care. Graduates of the program became known as Nightingale nurses, spreading her principles of nursing excellence across the globe. Beyond education, Florence also focused on healthcare reform in colonial and developing regions. Her correspondence with Indian officials led to significant improvements in sanitation and public health infrastructure in British India. She advocated for the construction of clean water systems, the establishment of hospitals, and the implementation of public health policies tailored to local needs. Her work in India exemplified her belief in the universality of healthcare as a fundamental human right. Florence's influence was not limited to healthcare alone. She was also a pioneer in the use of data and statistical analysis to drive policy decisions. She collaborated with renowned statistician William Farr to develop innovative visualizations, such as pie charts and bar graphs, which communicated complex data in an accessible format. Her use of statistics demonstrated the impact of sanitation reforms and reinforced the importance of evidence-based decision-making in public health. Despite her achievements, Florence faced significant personal challenges during this period. Her health, already compromised by her time in Scutari, continued to decline. She spent much of her later life confined to her home, working from her bedroom and relying on correspondence to influence policy and communicate with collaborators. Yet, her physical limitations did not diminish her intellectual vigor or her determination to effect change. Florence Nightingale's post-Crimean War efforts exemplified her evolution from a caregiver to a reformer and visionary. Her work laid the foundation for modern nursing, public health, and evidence-based medicine, transforming healthcare into a disciplined and scientific field. Through her tireless dedication, she demonstrated that the true measure of her legacy was not in the accolades she received, but in the lives she saved and the systems she reformed. This chapter of her life marked the beginning of a new era in healthcare, one in which compassion, knowledge, and advocacy combined to improve the human condition on a global scale. Florence Nightingale's most enduring legacy lies in her revolutionary approach to nursing education. This chapter explores how she established the Nightingale Training School for Nurses, transforming nursing from an unregulated vocation into a respected profession, and how her principles continue to influence nursing education and practice today. In the mid-19th century, nursing was largely considered menial work, often relegated to untrained individuals or those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. Florence Nightingale believed that this perception needed to change if healthcare was to improve. She envisioned nursing as a skilled and dignified profession, requiring formal education and rigorous training. This conviction was the driving force behind her establishment of the Nightingale Training School for Nurses at St. Thomas' Hospital in London in 1860. The school marked a groundbreaking shift in nursing education. For the first time, students were offered a structured curriculum that combined theoretical knowledge with practical experience. The curriculum emphasized hygiene, patient care, observation, and the ethical responsibilities of a nurse. Florence's influence ensured that the training instilled discipline, professionalism, and compassion, qualities she believed were essential for effective caregiving. The training program was deliberately selective, accepting only candidates who demonstrated the moral and intellectual qualities Florence deemed necessary for success. This selectivity was part of her broader effort to elevate the status of nursing and ensure its practitioners could command respect in their communities. Graduates of the program, known as Nightingale nurses, were often placed in leadership positions in hospitals, schools, and healthcare institutions worldwide, spreading her teachings far beyond London. One of Florence's key contributions to nursing education was her insistence on the use of evidence-based practices. Drawing from her experience in the Crimean War, she emphasized the importance of data collection, analysis, and observation in patient care. Her students were taught to meticulously record patient symptoms, responses to treatment, and environmental conditions, fostering a culture of critical thinking and continuous improvement in nursing practice. The Nightingale Training School also prioritized the integration of ethics into nursing education. Florence believed that nursing was not merely a technical skill but a calling that required empathy, humility, and a deep commitment to service. She stressed the importance of treating patients with dignity, regardless of their social status or background. These ethical principles became a cornerstone of the profession and continue to shape the values of nursing today. The success of the Nightingale Training School inspired similar initiatives worldwide. In the United States, institutions like Bellevue Hospital in New York and Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore adopted Florence's model, setting the standard for nursing education in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. In continental Europe, her methods influenced the development of nursing schools in Germany, France, and the Netherlands. This global diffusion of her ideas cemented her status as the founder of modern nursing. Florence's contributions to nursing education extended beyond formal institutions. Her 1859 book, Notes on Nursing, What It Is and What It Is Not, became a foundational text for nurses and caregivers alike. Written in accessible language, the book provided practical advice on topics such as hygiene, diet, and patient observation. Its widespread popularity reflected the universal relevance of her insights and ensured that her principles reached audiences beyond her immediate sphere of influence. Despite the transformative impact of her work, Florence faced challenges in implementing her vision. Resistance from traditionalists, financial constraints, and societal biases against women in professional roles were constant obstacles. Yet, her determination, coupled with her ability to build alliances and use data to support her arguments, enabled her to overcome these barriers. Her resilience in the face of adversity became a defining feature of her career. The establishment of the Nightingale Training School and the principles it embodied marked a turning point in the history of nursing. By professionalizing the field and setting high standards for education and practice, Florence Nightingale ensured that nursing would be recognized as a vital and respected component of healthcare. Her legacy endures not only in the institutions she founded but also in the countless nurses who, inspired by her example, continue to provide compassionate and competent care to patients around the world. Florence's vision transformed nursing into a profession that values both scientific rigor and human empathy, a legacy that remains as relevant today as it was in her time. While Florence Nightingale is often celebrated for her work in nursing, her contributions to public health reform were equally transformative. This chapter delves into her efforts to address systemic health disparities, her advocacy for sanitation reforms, and her pioneering work in public health policy that laid the groundwork for modern preventive medicine. Florence Nightingale's commitment to public health began during her early career but intensified after the Crimean War. Her experiences in Scutari demonstrated the devastating effects of poor sanitation, overcrowding, and lack of infrastructure on human health. Returning to England, she resolved to tackle these issues on a broader scale, believing that many of the diseases she had encountered were preventable through improved living conditions. One of her most significant contributions to public health was her advocacy for sanitation reform. Florence viewed hygiene as the foundation of health, a principle she articulated in her many writings. Her 1858 report on the health of the British Army exposed the dire consequences of inadequate sanitation in military barracks, leading to sweeping reforms in the construction and maintenance of Army facilities. This work exemplified her ability to connect policy with practical outcomes, saving countless lives in the process. Her advocacy extended to civilian populations, particularly in urban areas where industrialization had created densely populated neighborhoods with poor living conditions. She worked closely with Edwin Chadwick, a leading figure in Britain's sanitary reform movement, to promote the construction of sewage systems, clean water supplies, and waste management facilities. Florence's influence helped shape the 1875 Public Health Act, which established standards for sanitation and public health in England and Wales. Florence's impact on public health was not confined to Britain. Her work had a global reach, most notably in India, then under British colonial rule. At the request of the British government, she conducted a detailed study of health conditions in India, highlighting the need for clean water, proper drainage, and rural health services. Her recommendations were instrumental in the development of public health policies in India, demonstrating her ability to adapt her principles to diverse contexts. Another hallmark of Florence's approach to public health was her use of data to advocate for reform. She was a pioneer in the application of statistical analysis to healthcare, using innovative methods to present her findings. Her famous coxcomb charts, or polar area diagrams, visually illustrated the causes of death in the Crimean War, emphasizing the preventable nature of many fatalities. This approach not only strengthened her arguments but also revolutionized the way public health data was communicated. Florence's emphasis on prevention over treatment was another defining feature of her public health philosophy. She believed that addressing the root causes of illness, such as poor nutrition, unsanitary living conditions, and lack of education, was more effective and humane than merely treating symptoms. This perspective influenced her advocacy for health education, which she viewed as a critical tool for empowering individuals and communities to take control of their well-being. Her writings on public health, including notes on hospitals and suggestions for improving the health of the Army, became influential texts for policymakers and healthcare professionals. These works outlined her vision for hospitals as clean, efficient, and patient-centered institutions, setting standards that shaped the development of modern healthcare systems. Florence's work in public health reform was not without challenges. She faced resistance from entrenched interests, bureaucratic inertia, and societal prejudices, particularly as a woman in a male-dominated field. Despite these obstacles, her ability to combine compassion with scientific rigor and her relentless advocacy for systemic change earned her respect and recognition. Through her efforts, Florence Nightingale redefined the relationship between health and the environment, laying the foundation for modern public health practices. Her belief that improving living conditions could prevent illness was revolutionary in her time, and remains a cornerstone of healthcare today. By addressing health at its roots, she transformed not only individual lives but also entire communities, ensuring that her legacy would endure far beyond her own lifetime. Florence Nightingale's innovative use of statistics revolutionized not only the field of nursing but also the broader discipline of public health. This chapter explores how her application of statistical methods, particularly her pioneering use of data visualization, reshaped healthcare practices, advanced policy reforms, and elevated the role of evidence-based medicine in improving health outcomes. Florence Nightingale's interest in statistics was not merely academic. It was driven by her commitment to improving health and saving lives. She understood that the success of her reforms in hospitals and military care could be measured, documented, and improved through rigorous data analysis. At a time when healthcare was largely anecdotal and unquantified, Florence's approach was groundbreaking. She turned raw data into powerful evidence that could influence policy decisions, challenge entrenched medical practices, and garner public support for her reforms. Her first major statistical breakthrough came during the Crimean War, where she meticulously recorded data on patient outcomes, causes of death, and the impact of sanitary measures. This data revealed that most deaths were due to preventable conditions such as disease, rather than battlefield injuries. Florence used this data not only to advocate for better conditions, but also to directly challenge military medical authorities who had dismissed the importance of hygiene and sanitation. Her ability to present her findings with clarity and precision gave her credibility, despite the resistance she faced. One of Florence's most significant contributions to statistical analysis was her development of the polar area diagram, later known as the Nightingale-Rose diagram. This visualization, which looked like a pie chart, illustrated the causes of mortality in the Crimean War. By dividing the data into segments based on the type of death, battle wounds, preventable diseases, and other causes, Florence vividly demonstrated how poor sanitary conditions were responsible for a significant proportion of soldier deaths. This approach transformed data into a compelling visual story, making it easier for both the public and policymakers to understand and respond to the crisis. The Nightingale-Rose diagram was not just a piece of data visualization, it was a tool of advocacy. Florence used it to argue that reform in military hospitals was not only necessary but urgent. The diagram became a symbol of the power of data to drive change, laying the groundwork for future generations of public health professionals who would use similar methods to address health crises. Florence's ability to present complex information in an accessible and visually appealing way demonstrated her foresight in recognizing the importance of clear communication in healthcare. Florence's statistical expertise did not stop with the Crimean War. After her return to England, she continued to apply statistical methods to various aspects of public health. In her reports on sanitation and military healthcare, she used data to argue for systemic changes in how hospitals and health services were managed. She showed that improvements in sanitation, infrastructure, and hospital design could directly impact the health of populations, particularly in overcrowded and impoverished areas. Her work in these areas contributed to the development of public health policies that prioritize sanitation as a means of disease prevention. Florence also collaborated with William Farr, one of the leading statisticians of the time, to develop more sophisticated methods for analyzing mortality data. Together, they refined techniques for collecting and interpreting data on public health trends, using it to identify patterns and correlations between disease outbreaks and environmental factors. This collaboration helped to establish the field of epidemiology as a scientific discipline, based on empirical evidence rather than assumptions or conjecture. Her influence extended beyond healthcare, as Florence's work in statistics set a precedent for other social sciences to adopt empirical methods for investigating complex issues. Her statistical analyses were seen as a model of rigorous, objective inquiry, and her use of data to advocate for change helped to build the case for evidence-based policy across various sectors, from education to urban planning. Florence's work showed that statistics were not just numbers. They were a language through which societal problems could be understood and addressed. Despite her pioneering role in the use of statistics, Florence faced significant resistance from her contemporaries. Many medical professionals and military leaders were skeptical of her methods, viewing them as too radical or unscientific. However, Florence's insistence on the importance of empirical data, combined with her ability to demonstrate the tangible results of her reforms, eventually won over critics. Her work helped to establish statistics as an essential tool in medical practice and public health policymaking, securing her place as a founder of modern public health science. Florence Nightingale's use of statistics exemplified her ability to blend compassion with scientific rigor. By collecting, analyzing, and presenting data in ways that were both accessible and compelling, she not only improved healthcare practices but also influenced public health policies around the world. Her groundbreaking work in statistics demonstrated that data could be used as a powerful instrument for social change, laying the foundation for evidence-based healthcare that continues to shape the field today. Through her contributions, Florence proved that numbers and graphs were not just abstract concepts, but essential tools in the fight for human well-being. Florence Nightingale's contributions to nursing, public health, and the professionalization of healthcare have left a lasting legacy that continues to shape medical practice, education, and healthcare policy worldwide. This final chapter explores how Florence's pioneering work laid the foundation for modern nursing, public health reforms, and evidence-based medicine, and how her legacy endures in the global healthcare landscape today. Florence Nightingale's vision transformed nursing from a largely informal, often untrained occupation into a respected profession. Through her establishment of the Nightingale Training School for Nurses at St. Thomas' Hospital in London in 1860, she created a model of nursing education that combined practical training with rigorous theoretical instruction. This innovation not only professionalized nursing but also elevated its status, ensuring that nurses were viewed as integral members of the healthcare team. Graduates of the Nightingale School, known as Nightingale nurses, spread Florence's principles across the globe, influencing the development of nursing programs and standards in countries around the world. Florence's emphasis on sanitation and the role of the environment in health also had a profound impact on public health. Her work during the Crimean War and her subsequent advocacy for improved sanitation in military and civilian settings played a pivotal role in advancing the field of public health. By demonstrating the link between cleanliness, infrastructure, and disease prevention, Florence helped to establish sanitation as a fundamental component of health policy. Her efforts contributed to widespread public health reforms, including the construction of sewage systems, clean water supplies, and the regulation of food safety. These reforms not only saved lives, but also laid the groundwork for modern public health systems. In addition to her contributions to nursing and public health, Florence Nightingale's work with statistics revolutionized the way healthcare professionals and policymakers approached healthcare. By using data to drive her arguments for reform, Florence demonstrated the power of evidence-based medicine long before the term was coined. Her pioneering use of statistical analysis, particularly her creation of the polar area diagram, helped to communicate complex health data in ways that were accessible and persuasive. Her work with statistics not only influenced public health policy in her time, but also established the importance of data-driven decision-making in modern healthcare. Florence's impact extended beyond the technical aspects of healthcare reform. She also played a key role in shaping the ethical principles that guide nursing practice today. Her insistence on empathy, respect for patients, and the importance of moral integrity in caregiving laid the foundation for the values that define nursing as a compassionate and patient-centered profession. Florence's belief in the dignity and worth of every individual continues to resonate in modern nursing education and practice, where nurses are trained not only in clinical skills but also in the art of providing holistic, compassionate care. Despite her immense contributions to healthcare, Florence Nightingale faced numerous challenges throughout her life. As a woman in a male-dominated field, she encountered resistance and skepticism from many of her contemporaries, particularly those in the medical establishment. Yet, her persistence and intellectual rigor allowed her to overcome these barriers and establish nursing as a legitimate profession. Her ability to navigate these challenges, often in the face of personal health struggles, demonstrates her determination and vision for a better future in healthcare. Florence's work also paved the way for the development of healthcare systems that prioritize not only treatment but also prevention. Her focus on the social determinants of health, such as sanitation, nutrition, and education, foreshadowed modern approaches to public health that emphasize prevention and wellness over simply curing disease. Her belief that healthcare should be accessible, effective, and preventative continues to guide public health policy around the world. Today, Florence Nightingale's legacy is honored by countless institutions, organizations, and healthcare professionals. The International Red Cross, the World Health Organization, and numerous national nursing associations all recognize her as the founder of modern nursing. Hospitals, schools of nursing, and public health programs around the world continue to carry forward the principles she established. Florence's influence is particularly evident in the ongoing global efforts to improve sanitation, increase access to healthcare, and promote the professionalization of nursing in countries where these services are still developing. Florence Nightingale's work also continues to inspire those who strive for social justice and equity in healthcare. Her advocacy for the marginalized and her insistence that healthcare should be based on scientific evidence and compassion resonate in contemporary debates about healthcare access, quality, and inequality. Florence's model of healthcare reform serves as a touchstone for those seeking to address health disparities and build systems that prioritize the well-being of all individuals, regardless of their background or social status. In the 21st century, Florence Nightingale's impact is not only evident in the nursing profession, but also in the broader movement toward holistic, patient-centered care. The values she championed, compassion, professionalism, and scientific inquiry, are central to contemporary healthcare practice. Her commitment to improving the health of individuals and populations has shaped the way we approach healthcare today, and her legacy will continue to influence future generations of healthcare providers, policymakers, and advocates. Florence Nightingale's story is one of transformation, resilience, and profound impact. Through her pioneering efforts in nursing, public health, and data science, she not only improved healthcare in her time, but also laid the foundation for modern practices that continue to save lives today. Her work continues to inspire those who believe in the power of healthcare to change lives, and her legacy endures as a beacon of compassion, scientific rigor, and dedication to human well-being. Florence Nightingale's influence is as profound today as it was during her lifetime, and her contributions will continue to shape the future of healthcare for generations to come.